every story has a length where it's best, and it's not always short. Is Netflix making short format content? For a handful of $100, you can be competitive. AI doesn't sort of hit all sectors of video equally. Think about how difficult it is to get them to pay attention to you and to your video, and you're just gonna walk away from it after 47 seconds.
On this episode of To The Point, Tod Plotkin, the CEO and founder of GreenBuzz Agency, based here in DC. GreenBuzz has worked with a ton of major companies and brands as their agency of record and video partner, Axios, Goldman Sachs, Make-A-Wish Foundation, and so many more. Tod is also really a thought leader and keynote speaker in this area and really thinking deeply about video production. We talk about how it's being impacted by AI, how storytelling has been upended by social media, and the common mistakes we see on the corporate and agency side when thinking about a video project. All right, that's enough of a preamble. Now let's get to the point and the episode with Tod Plotkin. All right, Tod, thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me. Excited.
So GreenBuzz Agency, you started that, 15, 20 years ago?
Yeah, I would say 17 years ago, 08, October, but it was just me. I felt like when I actually left, started full-time, the company had one full-time staff member. That's when the agency was born, and that was May 2010, so 15 and a half years ago.
What was the impetus? I mean, a lot of people want to start a business. Very few do and actually take the leap. You kind of had a background where you worked for Washington Post, the Wizards, kind of a interesting resume, but then you hung your own shingle. What led to that?
Well, I had tried earlier in my career and failed. And so I just felt like I needed some seasoning. I needed to learn more about business. I needed to learn more about video production itself. I think I was pretty far behind on the video production side specifically. And so that's really what I was just trying to sharpen those skill sets and get better strategically on both fronts. And learned a lot at the Post and at the Wizards and the NBA and seeing how things worked and what didn't work and why it didn't work. But yeah, I tried a couple of years out of college, and I very much was focused on sports video production. I worked with a lot of high school teams, a lot of big football teams out of Texas and some of the big programs across the country, the AAU Junior Olympics. I worked with a lot of athletes that were trying to get into college and kind of showcase their skill set to be D1 and get a full scholarship. So it was a very niche. It was a niche within a niche. It was sports. It was youth sports. And it didn't work. And so basically the whole time I was working for Red Pixel, which is another video production company locally here in the DC area, and then the Washington Post, and then the Wizards. In the back of my head, I knew that ultimately I wanted to give it a second shot. And so I was just really trying to learn as much as I could during that period.
So video production over the last 15 years feels like there's probably been, there's been a lot of change. But let's just jump into, feels like we're on the precipice of something different, right? AI is, coming for every industry, but video production in particular is going to be impacted. And we're already seeing it with Sora and, a million other, Banana from Gemini and all the things. How is your agency thinking about, and how are you personally thinking about leveraging artificial intelligence and how it impacts kind of the workflow?
Well, it's moving so fast, especially within video production, that it's hard to have a long-term projection and vision for it. Mm-hmm. I think that you have to just be able to figure out, how am I going to adapt to what currently is available with the technology? If it does evolve beyond this, how would that go? And then anything beyond that is very difficult. So currently, what AI is really good at in video production is generating beautiful imagery. And a lot of times what we're doing is we're taking real, raw, authentic stories with real people, nonprofits, charities, human-centric stories. And to have beautiful imagery for free or very, very close to free is amazing for us. It's actually a giant boost. So if we're doing a documentary for Make-A-Wish Foundation and we can add all this beautiful imagery, and yes, we have access to stock imagery and footage out there just like anyone else does, and Make-A-Wish has their footage, the Family Featured has their footage, but if we can get access to beautiful footage and integrate that in, that's only elevating us right now at a very low cost point to us and to the client. That said, if I was an advertising agency and I were doing shots in Colorado of a car going around a mountain and I needed all these incredible drone shots and so forth, that would make me very nervous. I think that if most of my business model was based on already beautiful imagery and I was doing, a $500,000 to a $2 million shoot, and 17 of those 30 shots can be replicated by AI, and now I need to reduce my budget by 40% or 60% of what the budget originally was because I don't need to do as much filming. That's something where I would be very nervous. I did attend Cannes Lion this year, this past summer, and was around a lot of those advertising executives, and certainly they were nervous. And so I think that this AI doesn't sort of hit all sectors of video equally. I think there's been a lot of coverage. I don't need to get into it of how it's impacting the film and TV world. I think as it relates to corporate video advertising, I think it can really elevate an in-house team, a team that is smaller, that has a smaller budget in a positive manner. I think it could have a drastic effect on some of those agencies that are dependent on massive budgets.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. And I mean, when you think about like product video, like gone are the days of, if you are getting video for a widget, right? AI can do that really well, or a new chair. It can put it in any environment. And to your point, what used to cost tens, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars and a multi-person crew in a day and finding it, you can experiment with in a couple hours and get something that is whatever percentage there, right? 80% cooked, a B+. I don't know what your assessment of that is, but I think your comment around it's hitting different parts of the video industry, in different ways, not, equally across the board, is really astute.
Yeah, I would also say this isn't the first time that there's been a drastic change in approach to video production in corporate video and in advertising. I think in 2008 to 2013 is the first time you would have seen a massive shift where cameras, video cameras, professional cameras were, if it wasn't $250,000 or above, it wasn't up to standard. And that sort of applied across the board. An editing suite back then, an Avid Nitro Express and all these different names that they had for it were $110,000. I used to work at a place called Base Productions. They did a lot of shows with ESPN. And they had this bay of 20 different editing suites. They spent $110,000 on each. It was over $2 million. And that was such a price barrier. It was such a gatekeeper, sort of a price gatekeeper. And so it was across the board. It wasn't just the camera. It wasn't just the lights. It was the audio equipment. It was sort of all of these things. And in a very short order, all of those things went down to 1/20th scale, 100th scale. All of a sudden, an edit suite was a MacBook Pro for $2,000 and an editing program that might cost you $1,000 for the license. And so $3,000 versus $110,000. Think about the price difference there. Your 1/30th scale, 1/40th scale cameras. All of a sudden you could use a Canon GL2 and that cost about $2,500 to $3,000. Again, you're going from $250,000 to $2,500. That's 100th scale. So this isn't the first time that we've seen the scale drastically change. I think that first time around in 2008 to 2012 allowed people like myself to get in that felt like they were entrepreneurial, that they had the skill set on the video production side to compete with a big giant agency and sort of build an entire video production studio and agency for $10,000 to $15,000 that you just save up with your own salary. I think now it's much more democratized with content creators and using your iPhone and using free editing software. Using AI as supplements on sort of all fronts as a solo entrepreneur. And so, yeah, it's scaled down yet again. And now, for a handful of $100, you can be competitive. You can be in high school. You can be a junior in high school and have a great personality and light up a camera screen. And you can, make way and make a living out of it. So, yeah, it's pretty amazing to see it come around a second time.
Yeah, no kidding. That's a great kind of comparison. And now you are, I don't want to say a legacy player, but now you're an agency. And I wonder how you're thinking about if you're a solo practitioner, if you are that, 25-year-old where you were maybe 15 years ago with an entrepreneurial streak and maybe more time and almost push to have to leverage AI. I think one of the things when I think about legacy institutions, whether it's in video, finance, whatever, insert your industry, they're stuck in their ways and they have price points to maintain and they have, I guess, ways of doing things. You have to build in margin to experiment. And I think if you're a solo practitioner, you're maybe going to be forced to try new things, to experiment with AI in ways that if you're on a salary, if you're in a cushy kind of, corporate job, you may not be as apt to go that direction and experiment. How are you kind of talking to your team about the need to stay ahead of the curve while also kind of delivering on existing work? Does that make sense, that tension there?
Yeah, for sure. We'll come back to that. I want to go back to something you were saying earlier in that question, which is, the ability to adapt to this, what we just talked about, all this evolution in software and technology and price points. I saw, and I heard this from clients and I heard this from the agencies, they had a lot of trouble during that first shift going from, hey, every project needs to be $200,000 plus. Oh, you need me to do something for $50,000? That's impossible. Just the logistics, just the operations to get that all set up for you is going to be well over $50,000, which looking back on that is wild now, right? Mm-hmm. That's a whole annual salary for someone working at your organization. And you say you can't set up a video shoot for less than that. Yeah. And so I do think right now, as I look at not just us as a video production company, but our peers in the DC area, up and down the East Coast, I think that they're running into that right now with these content creators that have their own distribution strategy, their own audience that trusts them, and the ability to do 10 videos for $8,000 or $5,000. Whereas if you went to a lot of these video production companies and said, hey, you need to make this video and it needs to be done for $8,000, they're like, oh, that's below my threshold. My threshold is $12,000, $15,000. I won't do anything less than that. Mm-hmm. And so I do think that a lot of times when an organization engages with someone, they're testing them out with that $5,000, $8,000, $10,000 project. That then would open the doors to, all right, now we trust you. We've seen what your communication style is. We see, that your quality bar is where it needs to be. You're very attuned. The video looks fantastic. And now I'm willing to trust you with a $20,000, a $30,000, a $40,000 video project. So I think that a lot of this past year and a half or year for a lot of other video production companies has been difficult trying to adapt to this new generation of competition that's come up and said, hey, we can do it. We can do it at these price points. We're more than happy to do something. Oh, you need 10 videos from us for $8,000? Great. We'll do those 10 cuts for you and we'll make it happen. Yeah. So I missed the second half of your question, but I got stuck on that first part.
No, that's fine. I'll come back to the second point. But yeah, there is maybe that market push down. And I think what's interesting is when you think about kind of the end result strategy that the client may be engaged in, they're saying, we want to sell this much product. We want to attract this number of donors. And now in the age of social media and content creators and influence and all those things, it's no longer 20 years ago, oh, we need to go work with a video agency and create a branded video that we can send in an email newsletter to our donors. And that is kind of the one lever we're going to pull. Now it's, well, what if we thought outside the box and had, to your point, worked with 2 or 3 content creators that we know are reaching this audience and they can do it for way cheaper. And you can take your budget and splice it different ways.
Yeah, I think that what I've seen, over the 15, 17 years, I've seen different waves come and go. Sure. And I think that a lot of times marketing professionals and the folks that are in charge of these budgets for video, they hear something and then it's repeated to them 50, 100 times. They hear it in a podcast, they hear it at a conference, they hear it from their peers. I think one of them was all video needs to be short. Mm-hmm. All video needs to be raw and authentic for Facebook and Twitter and all the social media platforms.
Show and now yourself hitting record, all the things.
And now it's sort of this wave of everything needs to be from a content creator. And I think all of those things are fair. And I think they all have a place, but I think that they're over-indexed a lot of times in the marketing community. I think that they miss the point. So, for example, with everything needs to be short, clearly that's not the case. Look at Netflix. Is Netflix making short format content? I mean, who's bigger than Netflix out there? I mean, you could say YouTube is, but at most they're equal, right? And
even YouTube, look at the biggest podcasts. Joe Rogan's doing 3 hours. So
right, exactly. Yeah. The idea is think about how difficult it is to get someone of all the noise out there and all the competition to get them to pay attention to you and to your video. And you're just going to walk away from it after 47 seconds when your power users, when the people that really care about you, you're a big major university and you have alumni that love you and former people that work there that love you, and they're willing to stick around for 3 or 5 or 7 minutes. Even if the video production quality isn't fantastic, they're willing to do that because they're your power user. And you're just going to walk away from them after 47 seconds or 30 seconds because it has to be short. It has to be short. You can take the mindset of it has to be short, and you can apply that strategically and say, whatever we have to say to this audience, we will say in the first 25 or 30 seconds. But don't make your video short unnecessarily. So like there's all these different misnomers of it has to be authentic. It has to be a content creator. It's like go through that trial and tribulation, do it. Come out the other side knowing, how you want to work with content creators, when you're going to make a video short, when you're going to make it authentic, and then realize that there's, of course, a place for longer format content or premium content or non-content creator content. And how do you mix those things together, and how do you have sort of a full asset table that you can, utilize and distribute and make sure that all your different audiences are getting, met where they want to be met.
That's really wise. And I'm curious, when you're talking with clients on the front end, right? You're onboarding them to work with you. What are the most common misconceptions they come in with? Do they come in thinking, I want this, length of video, as opposed to asking, strategy or audience questions? I guess, what do you see as the most common pitfall when you're dealing with the marketing professional or the executive who has control over that budget?
Well, I would say that those conversations have drastically changed over the 15 years. I would say in the early days, there was very frequent that the communication professional we were working with and talking to had either done very little video production in the past, or this was their first time doing it. And it just wasn't, this goes back to what I was saying at the beginning, is the price point was outside of their control. Marketing professionals didn't have a budget to do video back then because it was too expensive. It would have been, hey, that's a higher level decision with the CMO, with our COO and CEO, and that's going to a big ad agency, and they're going to spend $2 million on making something and $8 million distributing it. And then about 12 or 15 years ago, it was like, all right, I do have $200,000 budget to make a series of videos, or, 10 videos or 100 videos. And so they were like, for the first time, sort of working with an external video production company on that. And so they had a lot of questions. They didn't really understand the timeline. To the core of your question, even to this day, a lot of folks don't understand how long video takes if you want premium and if you want quality. And I'm not saying you have to have either of those things, and I'm not saying it has to take a long time either. But if you want something that looks like a TV commercial, or you want something that looks like something you've seen on TV that has audio design and color grading and a lot of thought went into the editing pace and the transitions and so forth, then absolutely, it takes some time to figure all of that out. And there are a lot of specialists that all they do is graphic design. All they do is sound design. All they do is voiceover. Professionally, all day long, someone is just there doing voiceover for 15 different projects over the course of a month, and that is their profession and that's their specialty. And so to take all those moving parts and all those specialists and bring them together does take time. So that's probably the biggest misconception, is just, turning something around quickly because content creators can do that, because AI can do that, because a raw, quick video is able to do that, a snippet, right? A 7, 12 seconds, we're doing this long conversation here and there's 12 seconds of it and you pull it. That is quick for sure. But if you really want to tell an intricate documentary about someone's life, that takes time to figure that out and to, parse through the story arcs. How do the story arcs connect to each other? What's the emotional hit in each of those? How do you build to that emotional hit? How do you connect it to the next one? And so that's probably the biggest thing. What I would say is, going back to my initial point about how different the conversations were 15 years ago to now when you go into a conversation, most often they've done many, many video projects, and they are more figuring out, have you done my video project? Have you worked with my company, or have you worked with my industry? Have you made this very specific type of video? Have you done it for this audience and this distribution platform? I think that makes sense. I think that, that's just being cautious. That's sort of saying like, hey, I want to protect myself. I don't want to expose myself if this person hasn't exactly done the exact thing I've done. What I would say to those folks, though, is pay more attention to the overall quality of the person's portfolio that you're talking to, because if there's a first time they did everything, and there's a lot of styles of video out there, a lot. And so it's very unlikely that they've done your exact video for your exact industry. So yeah, look at the overall body of work, and does it hit you? Do you feel an emotional reaction? Do you feel, if the video was intended to make you feel sad, do you feel sad? If it was supposed to make you feel aspirational, do you feel inspired after you watch it? If it does, those are really complicated things to pull off. To make you laugh, to make you feel something is very powerful. If they can do that, they can probably do whatever it is that you're thinking that they need to do for you.
That's right. And I do think a lot of people are looking for that playbook, to your point. Have you done this in my specific industry, at my specific length, for this specific channel? And the question I think we run up to too is, do you want a carbon copy of what your competitor did, right? Or do you want to push the envelope? And there is value. I know, like Pinkston, GreenBuzz Agency works with a lot of different sectors, whether it's healthcare or sports or finance. And I think there's value in you're learning from different industries and different professionals and taking some of those best practices and applying them to other industries and new clients. So I agree.
Yeah. I mean, and I guess getting specific to us, we've had over 600 clients over the 15 years. And if you're talking finance or health or higher education, we probably have 20 to 50 clients in each of those. And I think that is a big selling point, is we're going to take lessons learned, not just from the 600 clients, but the specific 20 or 50 clients that are in your space. And absolutely, we're going to strategically be able to implement that for what you're trying to do. And if you're trying to do a specific genre of video, you're trying to do a documentary, we'll look at the 1,000 documentaries we've made in the past, and we'll take the best lessons learned there too.
Sure.
So yes, that is our sales pitch for GreenBuzz Agency, is we do have a lot of knowledge, and we probably have done the exact style of video, the thing I was just kind of complaining about before.
Sure.
I just think that, marketing professionals need to open themselves up to just what is the highest quality work out there, and make their decision based on that, not have you done this exact specific video before.
Yeah. I want to go back to something you said around the timeline and the price point. We've talked about this a little bit, but I think it's going to be really interesting over the next 5 to 10 years as AI starts to really go from a C level to an A level on color grading, on mastering sound, on whatever the sector or part of the video process is that you just mentioned. Those are going to get quicker and faster. And I'm curious if you think you're going to start having CMOs or people in charge of the budget say, well, we actually know that this can be done quicker, or we know that you can use this tool. Who do you think is going to be the catalyst for that change? Will it be the internal agency saying we're going to get more efficient, we're going to price differently? Or is that going to have to be the external client pushing that down like it was 15 years ago?
Wow.
I know it's kind of a loaded question.
It's not even that it's complicated. It's a tricky one to answer, because theoretically, who should be pushing that conversation is the internal video production company at the agency itself. What I can say firsthand, talking to a lot of internal video teams at a lot of different places, they haven't been doing the push for AI software implementation that I would have expected. I don't know if that is out of fear of losing their job or their colleague's job as a result. But here's the thing. Video is much more complicated than I think people realize it is. And I think that you need to depend on your full-time team that has expertise in this very complicated field. And if they're not the ones pushing it, then it's harder for someone that's in a different department. It's harder for a CFO whose expertise is in finance and numbers to come over and say, hey, we really should be using a lot more AI software here.
Yeah.
I mean, right now, there's a lot of AI software that could make any video production process, whether you're a single content creator or you're a team of one at an agency or a brand. There's a lot of software out there, and I'm not going to name names. There's a local defense contractor, very large one here in the DC area. They have a one-person video team, and she is able to create a high-quality video every other day that's about 2 minutes long. This is unheard of, by the way, by herself. She uses 16 different AI softwares to pull it off. Incredibly impressive. I had her come in, meet with my team. she is the outlier right now.
Yeah.
And I'm probably not answering your question because you're trying to think about the future and you're trying to, kind of connect the dots moving forward. I'm just telling you right now, I guess my answer is it's hard for me to envision the internal experts that should be driving this decision making that you're asking about if they're not doing it right now.
Yeah.
And I can't give you an answer as to why they're not doing it right now because they're usually very, software friendly. They love learning about new programs. They love learning about editing software and motion graphic software, editing software is much more sophisticated than you might think if you haven't actually explored it.
That's right.
If you've just used one that's free, a free model, and I can move a video around and I can throw this music under it, it gets much, much, much more complicated than that.
What do you think of the gig economy? And what I mean by that is the democratization financially, obviously, but then also the world is a lot smaller. And nowadays, whether it's Upwork or Fiverr, and you're looking at there are video editing teams in Indonesia, in Brazil, in Ukraine, all over the world that can, slap some, captions on your video and churn out those short form. Do you think would the advice to that younger person be go try and compete in kind of the short form editing, or really, I guess it depends on how you're wired, or move into the higher end, you have the understanding of how to, hit, pack an emotional punch, as I like to say, or, do the brand storytelling. That is not I don't want to say commoditized, but the really quick turn on you're editing podcast clips versus you're producing something that makes you feel.
Yeah, I think it totally depends on what your distribution strategy is. Who is your audience? What are you trying to get out of this? Are you trying to run a YouTube channel and get as many subscribers as possible? Are you getting hired by Sephora to create a really high-end commercial? That's going to absolutely impact the question that you just asked.
Sure.
What I would say is editing is by far and away the most important principle you can have in video production process, and it's not close. It's 70 to 80% of the entire process. If you're really good at it, then you can make a splash at any of those platforms in any way. If you have a feel for it, if you are naturally talented at that and you work on it and you put in the hard work in addition to being naturally talented, it's like a musician. Like some people are just really good at guitar. I'm not built that way. I could do guitar forever and I probably still wouldn't be good. It's the same thing. Some people can pick up a guitar very quickly and within 6 months they're world-class expertise. So editing is the difference maker. I think for most of what people think of when they think of video production, they're mainly thinking of social media platforms and Instagram and TikTok. And do you need to be an amazing editor for those platforms? No. But if you want to be in movies, TV shows, commercials, sort of the things that have massive budgets and prestige and glamour associated with it, I mean, it's wild to me, the disconnect at these award shows, whether it be the Oscars or the Emmys, in sort of the director and the prestige associated with that, and the editor and the lack of prestige. Because the editor is absolutely as impactful as the director, and in many cases probably more impactful. So yes. Sorry, on all of your questions, I keep keying in on one thing. You were asking me about editing on that.
No, it's really good.
In terms of the gig economy, I guess the quick answer on that is it doesn't come up a lot for me. I don't hear of a lot of our clients tinkering around with that. Literally, most of the time, they're thinking about how do they build out their internal video team? Do they hire content creators? Do they work with us? And that might just be me and sort of like where GreenBuzz Agency is situated in this whole ecosystem.
Makes
so
sense.
Maybe I'm missing it. I will say, and I will name names, and you can edit this out if you'd like to. The only time I've ever heard of this before is Bain, the gigantic high-end consulting firm. I know that they outsource almost, or at least they did when I last spoke to them, most of their video production process to overseas teams at a greatly reduced rate. That's competition, right? That's global. That's like,
Sure.
That's every industry sort of. If it can be outsourced, it probably will. Manufacturing obviously has been through that. It's just competition. What I would say is, since I don't almost ever hear of it, there must be some issue that people are running into. Otherwise, there's a lot of copycat going on where, like, if something did work and it worked really well, then I think for sure a lot of people would adopt to using overseas teams. I don't know if it's the time difference. I don't know if it's the culture barrier. I know that we had, so an example of this, we were talking to a very large financial institution in the Nordic area of the world. They had a massive budget and they wanted to do comedy commercials. And we got pretty far with them. And eventually it just we realized that culturally there was such a big difference between what was funny there and what was funny here. And we weren't going to be the ones to connect the dots to make that happen,
Sure.
right? And so maybe that's what's going on. Maybe, if you're working with people in other cultures, they're not quite getting the objective. This is me speculating. Don't hold me to that. I don't know why.
Yeah.
I just almost never hear about that as the competition.
In all your years doing video, what have you learned about storytelling that if you could communicate it to every client before they got on a call with you, or if you could, share it to a stage or an audience of CEOs from a stage, what would you say this is what you need to know about the importance of video storytelling in particular?
What I've learned about storytelling is most stories right now are being told on these social media platforms. And the way they work is you have to use the most powerful soundbite immediately to catch the attention, to get the algorithm to say, this video is worthy. I got to the 30-second mark on YouTube. I got to whatever the mark is on the other platforms. That is not how you would tell the story if you actually wanted the person to have an emotional reaction to the story. So, for example, we do a lot of video content for Make-A-Wish Foundation. The way Make-A-Wish Foundation works is they have 60 chapters around the globe. Most of them are here in the United States. They have galas. At the galas, there's a silent auction, there's a dinner, there's an onstage auction, and then lights go down and people watch a 10 to 15 minute documentary about how a child, their family, their community has been impacted. And that story is told the way a story should be told, where the sound bites work where they're supposed to work. We don't hit them over the head with the most powerful moment of the entire video in second 8 or second 3, right? We save that we build to that. You get to know who this person is. You get to know what the relationship is to their family, what the relationship is to the wish that they requested, how this might actually impact other people around them, their community, their school. And then you get to the powerful moment. And then you feel it so much stronger. It's like watching a movie and the most powerful scene in the entire movie being like the first thing you see. That doesn't make any sense. You've never seen that, right? So that doesn't change how anyone is going to make their videos. I think they're still going to make them at however the algorithm is telling them to make it, to get the views, to get the money, to get all the stuff that comes along with that. But storytelling is it's in the name. You have to tell a story. You can't just have a soundbite up front. That doesn't make sense.
Is there repurposing to be done there? Is the 10-minute video that plays in the dark gala, is that repurposed for social after the fact, after the donors have stroked their checks, after the auction's closed? Do you take that and put the moment of the child ending up at Disney World or meeting Patrick Mahomes or whatever it is that the wish is, and then show that on social media so then I engage with the full 10-minute video? I mean, can't both coexist?
Oh, they do. 100%. They do coexist, and Make-A-Wish does cut downs. And again, that's meeting your audience on the platform that they are on 100%.
And not being a purist, because there are people in the industry, and you talk to them all the time who say, to hell with social media, or this is the way it's got to be done. But then you're missing out on, to your point, the millions of views, the millions of new potential donors or viewers or supporters who, as a result of that 30-second clip, where you may not love the way it's told on Instagram Reels or on TikTok, that are driving people to make a wish for the first time.
Yeah, and by the way, that's why I said I don't think that is advice that anyone should heed and change what they're doing right now. 100%. And going back to like how conversations have changed with marketing professionals over time, they never would have asked for multiple deliverables. It would have been like, hey, I need a 2-minute video celebrating my company's 30th anniversary for our gala, and that's it. They wouldn't ask for anything else. And now, super rare that would ever take place. They usually want 6, 8, 10 different cut downs for all the social media platforms, the email distribution, the website, you name it. They want it for all the different things. And that's smart. And they should be doing that. And honestly, that's 6 to 8% of the overall budget will go into repurposing all of those videos and all that stuff. So 92% to get to that one video, 8% to get another 6 deliverables.
That's right.
The math makes a lot of sense. You should be doing all of that. That wasn't necessarily advice. And I'm not even saying that you're saying I'm wrong in that. What I'm saying is like, you asked me, what have I learned about storytelling? What I've learned about storytelling is every story has its own life. And sometimes that story is best told in 17 minutes and 11 seconds. Sometimes it's 2 minutes and 38 seconds. Sometimes it's 14 seconds. And that is it at its absolute best, right? Like you and I, off this, we talk a lot about basketball. There are certain players that certain years and certain games, and they raise to the occasion. And Steph Curry's amazing in the playoffs. He's amazing for Team USA, and he rises to the occasion. He meets the moment where it is. And that's the best of Steph Curry. Now, you could watch a highlight reel of him where he hits a bunch of threes with people in their face and so forth, but that doesn't really show you what makes him excellent. Anyway, I don't know that this actually makes any sense. My point is that the story, the best story, you don't know what it is. You don't know like what that length actually is until you do a proper edit with a editor that knows what they're doing. They see all the footage, they see all the raw materials that go into it. And then you can say like, this is the most powerful version of this story. And here's the other 8, and they're watered down and they're 22% as good.
I say that all the time. This is, I think, the difference. Everyone says, it is such a cliche. Everyone says they're a storyteller. But if you gave 10 people the same raw materials, and this gets back to your editing comment, if you gave 10 people the same raw materials, one of them is going to tell the best story.
Yeah.
In terms of length, in terms of pacing, in terms of the emotional soundbite they pull. And, having done this for a decade plus in TV news, I remember when I was a young pup journalist, I would come in and my producer would say, you got a minute 30 to tell this story. And I'd come back and I'd say, I need 2:15 because I got great sound, right? The mom and the kid had this emotional moment at the school drive and they were crying and the teacher was hugging them. And I would come back and start telling the producer all the reasons why I needed 45 more seconds. And occasionally, whether it was the photographer, whether it was the producer, whether it was my news director, whether it was me personally, I would sometimes say, you know what, I only have a minute 30. And most of the time, when you tighten things up a little bit, when you write tighter, you do need to let moments breathe. But a lot of times people tend to go long, and it's a lot harder to refine the story. And it doesn't mean you get firm on length. I would fight for 2:15 if I needed it, but it's one of those things where you need to start asking yourself, what is the right length for this? And not just saying, right, I need more time to tell it. Because Make-A-Wish could probably be impactful at 5 minutes. Maybe it's more at 12. Maybe it's less at 2.
Yeah. And by the way,
I don't know
if you're listening to this and you think like all I'm saying is that everything needs to be longer, that's not at all. I'm just saying that every story has a length where it's best and it's not always short. That's more, I think,
I think that's right.
what I'm trying to get at. And I think there's a lot of push and pull when it comes to, you mentioned news and you used to be in news. When I worked for the Wizards, I had 2 colleagues. One came from the news world. He spent 15 years there. One had spent 20 years in the film world. Film is as slow as it possibly gets. It's even slower than TV and commercials. News is as fast as it gets. It's, hour by hour. And so they constantly were in a battle and you had to kind of, find that middle ground. And for sure, sometimes you edit something down. You do this in writing all the time, right?
Yep.
You write something and you're like, man, I could really tighten this up. I could say this in 80 words instead of 300 words. And it's so much more clear. It's so much stronger. It's so much more powerful. I think that it's especially like a lot of what we do at GreenBuzz Agency is emotional storytelling. And I think with emotion, you do need to let stuff breathe. I think with comedy, you can be real fast. You should be real fast most of the time. I think it just depends on what you're going for. But we're working with these amazing nonprofits, with charities, with NGOs, you name it. And so you are telling stories of individual people and it's more complex. It isn't just bam, 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 quick edit, quick edit, quick edit.
Yep.
And so that's more our everyday, production cycle and what we're thinking about. And so that's where just slamming something and making it shorter for the sake of shorter doesn't always work.
All right, Tod. So let's round third and head home. There are questions that I ask every single person on To The Point. You're a CEO. You've run an agency for a long time. So my first question is, if you had to sum up your leadership style or advice in one sentence, what would it be?
Lead by example. Just, if you work really hard, if your colleagues see you out there pushing the boundaries and giving it everything you have, I think that definitely has a pretty powerful impact.
All right. What's your favorite book?
I don't know that this is my favorite book. I really enjoyed Phil Knight's book, his autobiography. I really enjoyed that. I just felt like I was there with him. I think it's rare for someone that successful to share as much as he did and be as good a writer as he is. And I think that was the perfect formula for a really strong book.
Shoe Dog.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great one. Maybe I should have asked you as a video guy, what's your favorite movie or TV show? I'll let you choose. I usually go book.
Mad Men for TV for sure. I mean, look at the industry we're in, right?
Yeah, that's right. John Hamm.
You can definitely, it's set in a different era, but you definitely see a lot of similarities.
Yeah, that's great. Favorite city in America?
Austin, Texas. Easy.
Why?
It has everything. It has amazing music. It has so much live music, and it has great food. People are friendly. Good weather, a lot of nature. It's not too busy. It's not too loud. It's not too dirty.
Tell that to the legacy folks, right? In Austin, they would tell you, I mean, maybe not dirty, but now the old heads would say too busy and, too crowded. But
yeah, I always have a good time. Yeah. I always feel in a good mood when I'm there. So for sure.
And lastly, you get to send a push alert to every American cell phone. 1 or 2 sentences. What do you push out?
Be kind to others.
Okay.
Probably something real simple.
Yeah, that makes sense. All right. Lastly, where can people find your GreenBuzz agency?
You can find us on the internet at www.greenbuzzagency.com. And we have a pretty strong LinkedIn presence. That's kind of been our focus. And then we have all the other accounts. We have Instagram and all this Pinterest, you name it. We have it. So yeah.
Great. Tod, thanks so much for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
If you like the episode, like, follow, subscribe, share, give it 5 stars, all that good stuff. Now, I'll get to the point and let you get back to your day. We'll see you next episode.